Action heats up. Well, hello there. Thanks for joining us again for another Plain English lesson. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and this full lesson can be found at plainenglish.com/296. Coming up today, the first of two profiles of the candidates in the American election. Today, we'll talk about Joe Biden and his chances for unseating the incumbent president. The English expression you'll learn is off the cuff, and we have a quote of the week. This is a longer lesson, so let's jump right in. There are 6 weeks left until Americans choose their next president, and polls show the challenger, Democrat Joe Biden, holding on to a clear lead. But that, you might remember, is exactly the position Hillary Clinton found herself in 4 years ago before losing in a stunning upset. Will this time be different? Biden is trying to do something very difficult: defeat a sitting president. It has happened only once in my lifetime and only 12 times in American history. The last time was in 1992, the time before that, 1980. Still, Biden has a decent shot. He has an overall lead in the polls of about 7%. He might not be the most inspiring candidate himself, but he doesn't have to be. Disapproval of Donald Trump is extremely strong and highly motivating for the president's opponents. Biden's entire campaign has been focused on contrasting himself with the president. Biden argues that he would be a steady, ethical leader with experience in competent governing, in contrast with the erratic and ethically compromised Trump. Joe Biden has laid out a mostly sensible, non-controversial platform of policies that leans left. On economic matters, he supports raising the national minimum wage to $15, mandating paid sick and parental leave, making the first 2 years of college free, and raising taxes on higher income earners. He would tax carbon emissions and reduce offshore oil drilling. He supports a national registry of gun ownership and supports universal background checks for potential gun buyers. He would expand the national government's role in providing health insurance. He would offer citizenship to undocumented immigrants who were brought to America as children and who currently don't have legal permission to be in the U.S. In all of these ways, his policies differ from Trump's. However, there is substantial overlap between Biden's and Trump's policies. Biden's stance toward China would be similar. Biden has also pledged to support the USMCA trade agreement among North American countries, a signature accomplishment of Trump's first term. He would not substantially change the country's policies on drug legalization, and foreign policy has barely factored in the campaign. Biden has not embraced some of the more radical proposals that his party's left wing loudly advocates. Biden has resisted endorsing Medicare for All, a national system of publicly funded health insurance, the Green New Deal, a panoply of environmental proposals, and calls to defund the police. All three of these proposals are well outside the mainstream of public opinion, especially in the details. In each case, Biden has supported a watered-down version and has resisted moving too far to the left. Regardless, I think it's fair to say most voters will not make their choice based on policies. This election is going to turn on Trump and his personality. Biden is, in many ways, Trump's opposite. Trump is impulsive and bombastic. Biden is cautious and looks for the middle ground. Trump is more comfortable off the cuff. Biden prefers giving a thoughtful speech. Trump is an outsider. Biden was a senator for 36 years and vice president for 8. Trump breaks with tradition. Biden respects tradition. Trump revels in the chance to call his opponents names, exaggerate, or just lie. Biden prefers to seek compromise and make alliances. Trump cares little for international norms and traditions. Biden would work to restore America's leadership abroad. In times of pandemic and global uncertainty, Biden is hoping people want a competent administrator instead of a bombastic leader. He has hammered Trump on his handling of the coronavirus, and the message is working. Over 60% of Americans hold Trump at least partially responsible for the slow and chaotic government response to the crisis. Biden is also promising to lower the temperature of public discourse. His recent television ads have emphasized that he would end the division, anger, and insults of the Trump years and restore normalcy to our politics, a message that an exhausted public will probably like. He is an honest and non-controversial public servant, though his policies and positions have ebbed and flowed, and he hasn't always been on the right side of many issues, especially in the eyes of today's liberal voters. He has always served honestly and ethically. Even his political opponents are quick to say Biden is likable. Biden leads in polling among likely voters. He also holds a small lead in the states that are most likely to decide the election's outcome in our state-based election system. Biden is raising more money, which he can use on campaign ads that highlight Trump's weaknesses. 53% of Americans view Trump unfavorably, while only 43% view him favorably. It is a yawning gap in approval ratings for an incumbent. This, in short, is a very winnable election for the former vice president. Yet there are a few reasons to worry. Biden's caution can work against him when events change quickly, as they have with violent protests and looting in American cities. On that issue, Trump jumped to the advantage while Biden dragged his feet for weeks before issuing tepid, middle-of-the-road statements that pleased nobody. Voters have also seen less of Biden than of any presidential candidate in recent history. For months, Biden has stayed out of the spotlight, running the campaign from his basement in Delaware. It has worked so far. Biden is standing aside and letting Trump commit political suicide. However, that strategy is not without its risks. In the final days of the campaign, voters may wonder why Biden has been in his basement while Trump, whatever his other flaws, has been out acting presidential. There are grumblings of dissatisfaction among his party's left wing. Some are asking why he's not leading by more against a historically unpopular president. Biden's lead over the summer was in the double digits, 10 or 12 percentage points, depending on the poll. That has narrowed in the last few weeks to about 7 points, forcing Biden to schedule more public appearances and more travel where he is less comfortable. The next big date on the calendar is September 29th, when the two will face off in a one-on-one televised debate. All right, so there you go. A number of you have requested an update on the American election, including Halim most recently on our live calls with Plain English Plus members. I've shied away from discussing American politics too much, just assuming you guys get enough of it via your own media. But I do recognize there is some curiosity out there, so I hope this was helpful. Next Monday, we'll look at the other candidate in the race. That would be Donald Trump. Since Trump does not lack for media exposure around the world, we'll take a slightly different approach on Monday's lesson. We'll talk about the reasons why people support him. The arguments against him are pretty well established, but tens of millions of people will cast their vote for this controversial figure, and we'll explore their reasons for doing so in Monday's lesson. Today's expression is off the cuff. When you speak or act off the cuff, you do so without too much planning or preparation. Your cuff, incidentally, is the part of your shirt sleeve that covers your wrist. On a warm day, you might unbutton the cuffs of your shirt to roll them up. So that's what a cuff is. The origin of this phrase is kind of funny. If you were to give a speech, and this phrase originated in the 1930s, so a different time. But if you were to give a speech and you didn't want to write out full notes, you could just write some notes on the cuff of your shirt and glance down at them while you spoke, mostly extemporaneously. Joe Biden has many admirable qualities as a politician, but speaking off the cuff is not one of them. Barack Obama was famously disciplined as a politician. He and his White House were always on message. But the Obama administration was on edge anytime then Vice President Biden had to speak off the cuff. He might say something embarrassing. Once he told a man in a wheelchair to stand up for a round of applause. Or he might reveal something he wasn't supposed to reveal, such as when he accidentally announced his support for gay marriage on a news program before Obama himself had taken that position publicly. Trump, on the other hand, lives off the cuff. Everything he does is off the cuff, instinctual, impulsive, without preparation. When he has to read a full prepared speech, he often gets bored with it and starts speaking off the cuff, returning to the text of the speech later. There are pros and cons to speaking off the cuff. On the one hand, you can get yourself in trouble by saying something that's not true or by embarrassing yourself. On the other hand, speaking off the cuff can make you sound more authentic, more trustworthy. In business, I find there are times when being detailed, prepared, and disciplined is the best approach. But there are other times when speaking off the cuff is better. Speaking off the cuff doesn't mean you're unprepared to talk about a subject. It just means that your words are not studied and prepared. Think about it. How many times have you listened to someone try to sell you something and it sounds like they're just reading from a speech? Or what they say sounds just a little too perfect. You wonder, is this the real story? Is this what they really think? Or is this just what they prepared? Is this just what they want me to hear? I read an article about venture capital firms, VC. VC firms invest money in small businesses that they think can grow quickly. Before they invest, they like to talk to the staff of the company and do their due diligence. They investigate the company to make sure the company is worthy of their investment. Part of that process is to speak informally with a lot of different employees. They want the employees to speak off the cuff. Unsupervised, unscripted conversations are important for the investors to get the true and complete picture of what's going on. The article said that during COVID, everything is happening on Zoom, and those conversations are very stiff and formal. The VC firms want to be able to have those off-the-cuff conversations that you just can't have by video conference. Some people are good speaking off the cuff. Others freeze. In business, again, I think I'm sometimes good off the cuff, but not always. If I'm really well prepared and I know the material, then I can be very good off the cuff. But there are some people in business who are just smooth. They can speak off the cuff in any situation, and it sounds good no matter what. I can tell you, I'm not one of those people. Today's lesson was about Joe Biden, a candidate for president, so I thought I would include a quote about Biden. I was going to select a quote from the candidate himself, but I decided instead to find an illustrative quote by someone else about the candidate. We'll do the same with Trump next Monday. The quote is from Morris Mitchell, an activist on the Democratic Party's left wing. Remember, I said that Biden has not moved as far to the left as many of his most left-wing supporters have wanted, but that the real objective of his campaign is to unseat Trump. So here is a quote from an activist from the party's left wing, Morris Mitchell. It's talking about Biden. Here it is. He can be a product of either your most cynical thinking or a product of your most optimistic thinking. That sentiment sums up how many of the Democratic Party's younger, progressive, activist voters think. He can either be a product of your most cynical thinking or your most optimistic thinking, one or the other. Well, that's all for today. Remember, next Monday we'll talk about Trump and the reasons behind his voters' support. But first, Thursday, we'll talk about 4 businesses in 4 different industries that are thriving during the current pandemic. One of those businesses lets you order their product without even clicking or even tapping in their mobile app. I'll leave you wondering about that until Thursday. Quick reminder about Plain English Plus before we go. This is our membership program that can really help you practice your English at the next level. It's designed to help you go from being just a listener to taking a more active role, whether that's in our forums, our live calls, pronunciation exercises, quizzes, and listening exercises. It's all about getting you to interact more with the content of the program and take an active role in your learning. You can check out a sample by visiting plainenglish.com/sample, SAMPLE, where you can try out all those exercises yourself. plainenglish.com/sample, and you can see for yourself. See you on Thursday.